My daughter-in-law inherited $55 million when my son died. The first thing she did was throw me out of the house. She told me to go die in a dumpster. I did not argue. I picked up my coat. I walked away. I made one phone call. My son had planned for this. He knew who he married. 5 days later her cards stopped working. The withdrawals were denied. The renovation crew cancelled. The bank manager asked her to leave. The lawyer wanted a retainer she could not pay. She was learning the price of $1. She should have listened more carefully when the will was read. If you're watching this, subscribe and let me know where you're watching from. I buried my son on a Monday. The funeral ended at 3. By 4 I was back in the house. It felt wrong. The rooms were too clean. The air was too cold. Someone had opened windows I never opened. Someone had moved things I would not have moved. I stood in the hallway. I did not recognize the silence. It was not grief's silence. It was the silence of a house being erased. I walked to the leather chair. My son and I bought it together. We drove 2 hours to find the right one. He made me sit in 12 chairs. He wanted me comfortable. I sat down in it now. The leather was cold. Upstairs I heard heels clicking. Sharp, fast, deliberate, not the sound of mourning. The sound of someone moving forward. My daughter-in-law came down the stairs. Sloane wore cream, a suit, fitted, expensive. She had her phone pressed to her ear. She did not look at me. She walked past like I was furniture. I heard her words. Accelerating timelines, she said. Liquidating secondary assets, she said. Maximizing liquidity, she said. My son had been dead for 6 days. She was already counting. I am 78 years old. I raised my son in this house. Not this exact house. We lived smaller then. But I helped him build this one. Blueprint to brick. I chose the paint in the kitchen. I planted the tree by the driveway. I was there when the foundation was poured. Now I sat in a chair. And I felt like a visitor. The next morning the lawyer called. He asked me to come to his office. The will would be read at 2. I wore black. I took a taxi. Sloane arrived in a different car. Larger. Newer. She wore sunglasses indoors. We sat across from each other. The lawyer's voice was smooth. The paper was heavy in his hands. He read my son's name. He read the date. He read the assets. Shares in a robotics company. Investments in 4 states. Art. Furniture. Accounts. The house. Everything went to Sloane Carter. Widow. My name came once. 1 sentence. Gratitude for my love and support. That was all. I did not cry. I had suspected this. But suspecting is different from hearing. Sloane's mouth moved. Not a smile. Something smaller. Something that looked like victory. I took another taxi home. The driver asked if I was all right. I said I was fine. I lied the way old women lie. Politely. On the ride I remembered something. 20 years ago. A diner off the highway. My son across from me. He had an idea. A business. A risk. A chance. He needed money to start. I owned a small house then. The house my husband and I bought young. We raised our son there. We painted every room ourselves. We fixed the roof twice. We paid it off in 30 years. I sold it. I gave my son the money. He said he would pay me back. I told him to build something instead. I called it faith. I called it love. Sloane would call it equity. I got home before she did. I went upstairs to my room. The guest room. That is what it was now. I had lived here for 3 years. Since my husband died. Since I could not manage alone. My son invited me. He said there would always be a place. He said I was family. He meant it. I believed him. Now I stood at the window. I looked down at the driveway. Sloane's car pulled in. She got out. She did not look up. She went inside. I heard her on the phone again. The same voice. The same cold efficiency. I stayed in my room. I did not go down for dinner. There was no dinner. There had not been meals since the funeral. I ate crackers from my nightstand. I drank water from the bathroom sink. I did not want to see her. I did not want to be seen. The next day I woke early. I went to the library. Our library. My son and I built it together. Not with hammers. With time. We went to estate sales on Saturdays. We searched used bookstores in small towns. We found first editions. We found battered paperbacks. We found textbooks with his notes inside. The room smelled like paper and wood. It smelled like him. I ran my hand along the spines. I touched each one. I remembered where we found them. I remembered what he said. This room was a map. A map of a life. A map of a mind. The door opened behind me. I did not turn. I knew who it was. Sloane stood in the doorway. Two men stood behind her. Large men. Unfamiliar faces. She wore gym clothes. Her hair was pulled back tight. It made her face look sharp. She did not greet me. She told me there would be deliveries. An elliptical. A weight rack. Equipment. She said the junk needed to go. Junk. She meant the books. She meant my son's handwriting in the margins. She meant our Saturdays. I asked her to wait. I asked her to leave the library alone. I did not beg. I spoke quietly. I spoke the way I used to speak to students. Clear. Firm. Reasonable. She said no. She said it was her house now. She said I was a guest. She said guests do not make demands. I felt something crack inside my chest. Not my heart. Something older. Something that had been holding me upright. She told the men to escort me out. They stepped forward. They took my arms. Not rough. Not gentle either. They walked me to the stairs. They walked me to my room. One of them carried my suitcase down. I had not packed it. Someone else had. The locks were closed. The zippers were shut. It sat on the wet grass. Rain was falling. Light rain. The kind that soaks through slowly. The front door closed behind me. I heard the lock turn. I stood there. I looked up at the house. I looked at the window of the library. It was dark now. I thought about my son. I thought about his promise. There will always be a place for you, he said. The promise felt stolen. Not by death. By choice. I picked up my suitcase. I walked to the road. I called a taxi from my phone. The driver came in 12 minutes. He asked where I was going. I did not know. I said a motel. Any motel. He drove me to one off the highway. The sign blinked red and white. The carpet inside was brown and worn. It smelled like cigarettes and cleaning solution. I paid for 3 nights. I did not know why 3. It seemed like enough time to think. I sat on the bed. The springs creaked. I looked at my phone. I could call a friend. I could ask for help. I could cry. I did none of those things. I called Harold Quinn instead. Our family lawyer. He answered on the second ring. I told him what happened. I told him about the will. I told him about the library. I told him about the locked door. He did not sound surprised. He sounded ready. He said my son had built something. Something legal. Something exact. He said the will I heard was not the only one. He said to wait. He said to disappear. He said to trust him. I hung up. I turned off my phone. I lay down on the bed. I did not cry. I closed my eyes. I listened to the rain. I listened to the highway outside. I listened to my own breathing. I thought about my son. I thought about the chair we bought together. I thought about the library we built. I thought about the promise. And I waited. If you're watching this, subscribe and let me know where you're watching from. I stayed in the motel for 3 days. The room had one window. It faced the parking lot. I watched cars come and go. I watched people carry suitcases. I watched them leave. Nobody stayed long. Nobody belonged there. Neither did I. But I had nowhere else to go. I ate from the vending machine. Crackers, peanuts, stale cookies. I drank coffee from the lobby. It tasted like metal. I drank it anyway. I kept my phone off. Harold said to disappear. Harold said to wait. So I waited. I did not watch television. I did not read. I sat on the bed. I thought about my son. I thought about the library. I thought about Sloane's face. That small movement of her mouth. Not quite a smile. Victory without joy. On the third day I turned on my phone. There were no messages. I do not know what I expected. An apology maybe. An explanation. Something human. There was nothing. I called Harold. He answered immediately. He asked where I was. I told him. He said to stay there. He said things were moving. He did not say what things. He said Sloane was spending. He said she was spending fast. Designer. Boutiques. Reservations. He said she hired people to renovate. He said she was planning a party. A celebration. I asked him when. He said Saturday. I asked him what I should do. He said nothing. He said to stay invisible. He said to let her believe she won. I hung up. I looked around the motel room. Brown carpet. Beige walls. Thin curtains. This was invisible. This was exactly where I needed to be. I went to the small bathroom. I looked in the mirror. My hair was gray and flat. My face looked tired. Old. I had always looked old to young people. Now I looked old to myself. I washed my face with cold water. I did not wear makeup. I had not worn makeup since the funeral. There was no point. I went back to the bed. I lay down. I closed my eyes. I tried to sleep. Sleep did not come easily. When it came, it brought dreams. Dreams of my son as a boy. 6 years old. 7. 8. He took apart our radio once. Piece by piece. Spread across the kitchen table. I asked him why. He said he wanted to see how it worked. I asked if he could put it back together. He said he thought so. He did. It took him 2 days. But he did it. The radio worked. It worked better than before. My husband laughed. He called our son a genius. I called him curious. Curiosity was safer than genius. Genius made people expect too much. I woke up in the dark. The clock said 3 in the morning. I could not fall back asleep. I turned on the lamp. I picked up my phone. I opened the photos. I scrolled back. Years back. My son at his college graduation. My son at his wedding. My son holding blueprints for the house. My son in the library. He was smiling in that one. Not at the camera. At a book in his hands. I did not remember taking the picture. But I had. I stared at it for a long time. Then I turned off the phone. I turned off the lamp. I sat in the dark. Friday came slowly. I ate breakfast in the lobby. Weak coffee. Hard bagel. Small banana. An old man sat 2 tables away. He nodded at me. I nodded back. We did not speak. Old people understand silence. We do not need to fill it. I went back to my room. I sat by the window. I watched the parking lot. A family loaded a minivan. 2 kids. Tired parents. The kids were fighting over something small. The mother looked exhausted. The father closed the trunk too hard. They drove away. I wondered where they were going. I wondered if they knew how lucky they were. To be together. To be going somewhere. To belong to each other. My phone buzzed. A text from Harold. Tomorrow. 2 o'clock. My office. That was all. No explanation. No details. Just a time and a place. I texted back. I will be there. I set the phone down. I felt something shift inside me. Not hope. Hope was too bright. This was something steadier. Something harder. Resolve. Saturday morning I woke early. I showered in the narrow stall. The water pressure was weak. The soap smelled like nothing. I washed my hair carefully. I dried it with a thin towel. I put on the same black dress. The one I wore to the funeral. The one I wore to the will reading. It was the only nice thing I had. Everything else was still in the house. My house. Not my house. Sloane's house now. I checked out at noon. The clerk barely looked at me. I paid cash. I carried my suitcase to the curb. I called a taxi. The driver arrived in 10 minutes. I gave him Harold's address. He nodded. He did not ask questions. We drove through town, past the grocery store where I used to shop, past the park where I walked with my son, past the street that led to the house. I did not look down it. I looked straight ahead. We arrived at 1:45. Harold's office was in an old brick building. 3rd floor. No elevator. I climbed the stairs slowly. My knees complained. I ignored them. The waiting room was small and quiet. Leather chairs. Old magazines. Soft lighting. A receptionist sat behind a desk. She was young. 25 maybe. She looked up and smiled. She asked my name. I told her. She said Mr. Quinn was expecting me. She said to have a seat. I sat. I put my suitcase beside me. I folded my hands in my lap. I waited. 5 minutes passed. 10. The door opened. But it was not Harold. It was Sloane. She walked in fast. Her heels clicked on the floor. She wore black too. But hers was different. Designer. Fitted. Expensive. Her hair was perfect. Her makeup was perfect. Everything about her looked controlled. She stopped when she saw me. Her face went still. Not surprised. Something else. Caught. She did not speak. I did not speak. The receptionist stood up. She said Mr. Quinn would see us now. Both of us. Sloane's jaw tightened. She turned and walked toward the office. I stood. I picked up my suitcase. I followed her. We walked down a short hallway. Harold's door was open. He stood inside. Tall. Gray hair. Steady eyes. He gestured for us to enter. Sloane went first. I went second. The door closed behind us. Harold pointed to 2 chairs. We sat, not next to each other. A small table separated us. Harold sat behind his desk. He opened a folder. He did not look at Sloane. He looked at me. He asked if I was all right. I said I was. He nodded. Then he looked at Sloane. He said there had been a complication. He said the will had a condition. A fiduciary duty. For 30 days after reading. Sloane had to protect the family's welfare. The family's legacy. He said she had failed. Sloane leaned forward. She said she did not understand. Harold said it simply. She expelled a family member without cause. She violated the terms. She triggered a secondary provision. Sloane's face changed. The control slipped. Fear moved underneath. Harold reached into his desk. He pulled out an envelope. Cream paper. Blue wax seal. He placed it on the desk. He said my son had prepared for this. He said my son knew who he married. He said my son built a trap. And Sloane had walked right in. Harold broke the seal. The sound was small, but it filled the room. He pulled out a single page. He began to read, and I finally understood. My son had not abandoned me. He had protected me, even from the grave, even when I thought I was alone. He had been there all along. If you're watching this, subscribe and let me know where you're watching from. Harold read slowly. Each word had weight. Each word had purpose. The document was called a codicil. An addition to the will. A hidden instruction. My son wrote it 2 years ago. 2 years before he died. Before he got sick. When he still believed in time. The codicil said this. If Sloane violated her fiduciary duty. If she harmed the family's welfare. If she expelled me from the home. Then everything changed. Every single thing. The will we heard was void. The assets would not go to her. They would go into a trust. The Brooks Legacy Trust. I would be the trustee. I would control everything. The house. The money. The investments. All of it. Harold kept reading. The trust had a mission. To fund education for brilliant kids. Kids who could not afford college. Kids who reminded my son of himself. Curious. Driven. Broke. The foundation would bear his name. It would open doors. It would change lives. Sloane would receive a stipend. $2,000 a month. But only if she worked. Full-time employment. Verifiable income. No work meant no money. She could live in the guest cottage. Rent-free. But not in the main house. Not in my son's house. Not anymore. Harold finished reading. He set the paper down. The room was silent. I could hear Sloane breathing. Fast. Shallow. I could hear the clock on the wall. Ticking. I could hear traffic outside. Distant. Ordinary. The world kept moving. But in this room time had stopped. Sloane's face had gone white. Her hands gripped the arms of her chair. Her knuckles were bone-colored. She said it was not fair. She said she was his wife. She said she deserved everything. Harold said the law disagreed. He said she signed the fiduciary agreement. She signed it the day the will was read. She signed without reading. She thought it was routine. She thought it was nothing. It was everything. Sloane stood up. She said she would fight this. She said she would hire lawyers. She said she would contest the codicil. Harold said she could try. He said it would take years. He said it would cost millions. He said she had no access to millions. Not anymore. He had already filed holds on the accounts. He had frozen the credit cards. He had notified the bank. Every door she thought was open had closed. Every key she thought she had no longer worked. Sloane's breathing changed. It became ragged, uneven. She looked at Harold. She looked at me. Her eyes were wild now. Not controlled. Not perfect. Raw. She asked when this happened. Harold said a few days ago. The day she expelled me. The day she locked the door. That was the day he filed. The 30-day clock had already started on the day of the reading. That was the day she lost everything. Sloane sat back down, slowly, like her legs had given out. She stared at the desk. She did not speak. Harold asked if she understood. She nodded. Barely. Harold said there would be papers to sign. Transfers. Releases. Acknowledgements. He said his assistant would prepare them. He said it would take a week. He said she needed to find employment. Within 30 days. Or the stipend would stop. Sloane still did not speak. Harold looked at me. He asked if I had questions. I said no. I understood everything. Everything my son had done. Everything he had planned. Harold said I could go. He said he would handle the rest. He said he would call me Monday. I stood. I picked up my suitcase. I walked to the door. I did not look at Sloane. I did not need to. I stepped into the hallway. The receptionist smiled at me. She asked if I needed anything. I said no. I said thank you. I walked down the 3 flights of stairs. My knees still hurt. I still ignored them. Outside the air was cool. It was late afternoon. The sun was low and golden. I stood on the sidewalk. I called a taxi. While I waited, I looked at the sky. It was clear. No clouds. Just blue fading into gold. The taxi came. I told the driver an address. My address. The house. He drove without speaking. I watched the streets pass. I knew every turn, every tree, every corner. We pulled into the driveway. I paid the driver. I got out. I stood looking at the house. It looked the same. Red brick, white trim, oak tree. But it felt different. It felt like mine again. I walked to the front door. I did not have a key. I rang the bell. Nobody answered. I waited. I rang again. Still nothing. Sloane was probably still at Harold's office. Signing papers. Facing consequences. I sat down on the front step. I put my suitcase beside me. I would wait. I had waited in a motel for days. I could wait here for hours. This was my home. I belonged here. The sun moved lower. The gold turned to orange. Then to pink. The air grew cooler. I did not move. A car pulled up. Not Sloane's car. A sedan I did not recognize. Harold got out. He walked toward me carrying a briefcase. He said he thought I might need this. He opened the briefcase. Inside was a key. My key. The one I had before. My son had given Harold a copy. Years ago. Just in case. In case of this. Harold handed it to me. The metal was cold in my palm. I closed my fingers around it. Harold said Sloane would not return tonight. She had checked into a hotel. She needed time. He said the house was empty. He said it was mine now. Legally. Officially. He said to rest. He said there would be work ahead. But tonight I should rest. I thanked him. He got back in his car. He drove away. I stood. I put the key in the lock. It turned smoothly. The door opened. I stepped inside. The air was different. Warmer. Softer. I closed the door behind me. I stood in the hallway. The same hallway where I stood after the funeral. But everything had changed. I walked to the library. The door was closed. I opened it. The books were still there. Every single one. The spines I knew by heart. The pages I had touched 1,000 times. Sloane had not cleared it yet. She had not had time. After the cards were frozen, the delivery crew cancelled. I ran my hand along the shelf. I pulled out a book. A first edition we found in Vermont. My son was 30 then. We drove 4 hours for an estate sale. We bought 6 books that day. This was his favorite. I opened it. His handwriting was in the margin. Small, neat, certain. I pressed the book to my chest. I stood in the middle of the library. Our library. And I cried. Not sad tears. Not happy tears either. Something in between. Relief. Grief. Gratitude. All of it mixed together. I cried until there was nothing left. Then I closed the book. I put it back on the shelf. I turned off the light. I went upstairs. Not to the guest room. To my old room. The one I had before I moved here. The one my son said would always be mine. The bed was made. The curtains were drawn. Everything was exactly as I left it. Sloane had not touched this room. Maybe she forgot about it. Maybe she did not care. It did not matter. I set my suitcase down. I lay on the bed. I did not take off my shoes. I did not pull back the covers. I just lay there, looking at the ceiling, thinking about my son, thinking about his mind, how he saw problems before they arrived, how he built solutions before they were needed, how he protected me even when he was gone. I thought about the radio, the one he took apart, piece by piece, and put back together, better than before. He had done the same thing with his life. With my life. He took it apart. He rebuilt it. And now it worked. Now it made sense. I closed my eyes. For the first time since the funeral. I slept without dreams. If you're watching this, subscribe and let me know where you're watching from. I woke to sunlight. It came through the window in stripes. Gold and white across the floor. For a moment I forgot where I was. Then I remembered. My room. My house. My life given back. I sat up slowly. My body ached from sleeping in my clothes. I looked at the clock. 8:30. Sunday morning. I stood and walked to the window. The oak tree outside was still. No wind. The grass needed mowing. My son used to mow it himself. Every other Saturday. He said it helped him think. I turned away from the window. I went to the bathroom. I washed my face with warm water. I looked in the mirror. Same gray hair. Same tired face. But something was different. My eyes looked clearer. Less lost. I went downstairs. The house was quiet. Completely quiet. No clicking heels. No cold voice on the phone. Just silence. The kind I recognized. The kind I had lived in before. I walked to the kitchen. It was clean. Too clean. Nothing on the counters. Nothing on the table. Sloane had stripped it bare. I opened the refrigerator. Empty except for bottled water. And a container of something expired. I closed it. I would need to shop. Later. First I needed coffee. I found the coffee maker in the cupboard. Sloane had moved it. I found the coffee in a different cupboard. She had moved that too. I made a pot. The smell filled the kitchen. Rich. Warm. Familiar. I poured a cup. I sat at the table. The same table where my son told me his ideas. Where we planned the library. Where we ate breakfast together. I sipped the coffee. It was hot and bitter. Perfect. My phone rang. I did not recognize the number. I answered anyway. It was Harold. He asked if I slept well. I said I did. He said that was good. He said there was news. Sloane had tried something. Yesterday after I left. She went to the bank. She tried to withdraw cash. A lot of cash. $50,000. The bank denied her. The accounts were frozen. She argued with the manager. She made a scene. Security asked her to leave. Harold said she tried again this morning. Different bank. Same result. She also called a lawyer. The lawyer asked for a retainer. $25,000 up front. She could not pay it. Harold said she was running out of options. And running out of time. He said the paperwork would be ready by Tuesday. He would need me to come sign. I said I would be there. He hung up. I finished my coffee. I sat there thinking. About Sloane. About desperation. How it changes people. How it reveals them. I wondered if she understood yet. That this was not punishment. This was consequence. The difference matters. I stood. I rinsed my cup in the sink. I went to the library. I needed to see it in daylight. I needed to know it was real. I opened the door. Morning light filled the room. It touched the spines. It made the wood glow. Everything was here, untouched, safe. I walked along the shelves. I touched each section: fiction, history, science, poetry, my son's textbooks from college, my old teaching books, first editions in protective covers, paperbacks held together with love. This was not just a library. This was proof of who we were, what we valued, what we built together. I pulled out one of his notebooks. He kept dozens of them. Ideas, sketches, code. This one was from 5 years ago. Before he got sick. I opened it. His handwriting covered every page. Diagrams, equations, notes in the margins. On one page he had written something different. Not code, not math, words, a list. Things that matter. Mom. Curiosity. Building things that last. Protecting what is vulnerable. Creating opportunities. Leaving the world better. I read it 3 times. I ran my finger over his writing. The ink was black and certain. He knew what he wanted. He knew what he believed. And he built his life around it. Even his death. I closed the notebook. I put it back on the shelf. I left the library. I spent the day cleaning. Not because the house was dirty. Because I needed to move. I dusted shelves. I swept floors. I opened windows. Fresh air moved through the rooms. It pushed out the cold. It pushed out the emptiness. I found small things Sloane had moved. A photograph turned face down. A blanket shoved in a closet. My reading glasses hidden in a drawer. I put everything back. In the right places. The places they belonged. By evening I was tired. Good tired. The kind that comes from work. I made soup from a can. I ate at the table. I watched the sun set through the window. Orange, pink, purple, then dark. Monday morning I woke early. I dressed carefully. Navy pants. White blouse. The clothes I used to wear teaching. Professional. Respectful. Practical. I made coffee. I ate toast. I waited for Harold to call. He called at 9. He said he'd expedited the filings over the weekend. He asked me to come at 11. I said I would. I took a taxi. The driver was different this time. Younger. He tried to make conversation. I answered politely. But I did not encourage him. I needed to think. Harold's office looked the same. Same brick building. Same 3 flights of stairs. Same receptionist. She smiled when she saw me. She said Mr. Quinn was ready. She led me to his office. Harold stood when I entered. He shook my hand. His grip was firm and warm. He gestured to a chair. I sat. He sat across from me. Papers covered his desk, organized in neat stacks. He explained each one. Transfer of assets, trust documents, tax forms, banking authorizations. He showed me where to sign. I signed everything. My hand was steady. My signature was clear. Evelyn Brooks, trustee. When I finished, Harold gathered the papers. He put them in folders. He said it was done. Legal, binding, final. He said the house was mine. The accounts were mine. The responsibility was mine. He said I would receive statements, monthly reports. He would help with anything I needed. But the decisions were mine. I thanked him. He said I did not need to thank him. He said my son planned everything. He just followed instructions. I stood to leave. Harold walked me to the door. He said one more thing. Sloane had found a job. She started today. A coffee shop downtown. Morning shift. 6 to 2. Minimum wage plus tips. She had no choice. The 30 days were counting down. 24 days left. She would work. Or she would have nothing. I nodded. I did not feel victorious. I felt something quieter. Balance. Things settling into place. I left the office. I walked down the stairs. Outside the air was cool and clean. I stood on the sidewalk. I looked up at the sky. It was blue and endless. I thought about my son. About his list. Things that matter. I was doing what mattered now. I was protecting what was vulnerable. I was creating opportunities, not for myself, for others, for kids who needed a chance. Kids like my son once was. I started walking, not to catch a taxi, just to walk, to feel my feet on solid ground, to feel the sun on my face, to feel alive. After all of it, after the grief and the loss, after the cruelty and the waiting, I was still here, still standing, still moving forward, and I had work to do. If you're watching this, subscribe and let me know where you're watching from. The work began on Tuesday. Harold sent over a woman named Patricia. She worked in nonprofit administration. She knew foundations. She knew grants. She knew how to build what my son imagined. We met in the library. She was younger than me. 50 maybe. Gray suit. Careful smile. Organized briefcase. She shook my hand. Her grip was professional. She called me Mrs. Brooks. I asked her to call me Evelyn. She nodded. We sat at the oak table. She opened her briefcase. Papers came out. Files. Folders. Lists. She explained what we needed. Articles of incorporation. Tax-exempt status. Board members. A mission statement. Application criteria. She made it sound simple. I knew it was not. But I listened. I took notes. I asked questions. We worked for 3 hours. By the end we had a plan. A timeline. 6 months to launch. Maybe less if we moved quickly. Patricia stood to leave. She said she would return Thursday. She said we had a lot to build. I said I knew. She smiled then. A real smile. Not professional. Human. She said my son would be proud. I did not know what to say to that. So I said nothing. I walked her to the door. I watched her car pull away. Then I went back to the library. I sat in the quiet. I looked at the notes we made. The Brooks Scholars Foundation. That was the name. Simple. Clear. Honest. For students pursuing science, technology, engineering, mathematics. Students who showed exceptional potential. Students who could not afford college. We would pay tuition. We would pay for books. We would pay for housing. We would provide mentorship, internships, a path forward. My son had written all this. In the codicil. In his notebooks. He had seen the need. He had built the answer. Even knowing he would not see it work. That night I cooked a real meal. Chicken, rice, vegetables. I set the table properly. Plate, fork, knife, glass. I ate slowly. I tasted everything. The house felt different now. Not empty. Full of purpose. Full of future. Wednesday I woke to rain. Heavy rain that drummed on the roof. I made coffee. I sat at the kitchen table. I opened my laptop. Harold had sent me bank statements. Account balances. Investment portfolios. Numbers I could barely comprehend. $55 million. That was what my son had built. What he had earned. What he had saved. I scrolled through the pages. Stock holdings. Real estate investments. Bonds. All of it generating income. Income that would fund scholarships. Forever. If we managed it correctly. I closed the laptop. I looked out at the rain. I thought about the house I sold 20 years ago. $60,000. It felt like so much then. I gave it all to my son. He turned it into this. Into 55 million. Into opportunity for hundreds of kids. Maybe thousands over time. I thought about return on investment. Not in money. In lives. In futures. In doors opened that would have stayed closed. That was the math that mattered. Thursday Patricia returned. She brought someone with her. A man named James. He was a lawyer. Specialized in educational foundations. He would handle the legal work. We sat in the library again. James explained the structure. How the trust would operate. How funds would be distributed. How we would select recipients. He used words I barely understood. Fiduciary responsibility. Endowment management. Distribution policies. But Patricia translated. She made it clear. We would be careful. We would be fair. We would be transparent. Every dollar would be accounted for. Every decision would be documented. My son had built systems. We would honor them. James left after 2 hours. Patricia stayed. She asked if I had questions. I had one. I asked about Sloane. Whether she could challenge this. Patricia said no. The codicil was airtight. Harold had made sure. My son had made sure. Sloane had signed away her right to contest. When she signed the fiduciary agreement, she thought she was signing routine paperwork. She was signing her surrender. Patricia said Sloane could live in the cottage. She could take her stipend. She could work. She could rebuild. But she could not touch the foundation. She could not touch the trust. She could not touch anything that mattered. I nodded. I did not feel satisfaction. Just clarity. Friday morning I walked downtown. I needed air. I needed to move. I needed to see the world my son saw. The coffee shop was on Main Street. Small. Busy. Windows facing the sidewalk. I stood outside. I looked through the glass. I saw her. Sloane. She wore black pants and a white shirt. An apron tied around her waist. Her hair was pulled back. No makeup. No jewelry. She looked smaller somehow. She took orders at the counter. She wrote them on cups. She handed them to the barista. She moved efficiently. No wasted motion. A customer said something. She smiled. Not the smile I knew. This one reached her eyes. I watched for 5 minutes. Maybe 10. Then I walked away. I did not go inside. I did not need to. I had seen what I needed to see. She was working. She was surviving. That was enough. Saturday I met with an accountant. Harold recommended her. Her name was Susan. She would manage the foundation's finances. Track expenses. File taxes. Prepare annual reports. We met at her office. Not the library this time. I needed to learn to work in other spaces. Susan was direct. She did not waste time. She showed me spreadsheets, projections, best case scenarios, worst case scenarios. She said we could support 30 students a year. 40 if the market performed well. 20 if it did not. Over 30 years that was 900 students. Maybe more. I looked at the numbers. I thought about 900 lives. 900 futures. 900 chances. Susan asked if I wanted to start small. Test the model. 5 students the first year. I said no. I said we start with 30. We do it right from the beginning. My son would not have done it halfway. Neither would I. Sunday I rested. I did not work. I did not plan. I sat in the library. I read one of my son's favorite books. Science fiction. A story about building something that lasts. About systems that outlive their creators. About legacy. I read slowly. I thought about the word legacy. People use it wrong. They think it means monuments, buildings with names on them, plaques. It does not. Legacy is what continues after you are gone. What grows, what multiplies, what opens. My son understood that. He did not want a statue. He wanted a system, an engine that keeps running, a door that keeps opening. That was legacy. That evening I called Harold. I told him we were ready. Ready to file the paperwork. Ready to launch the foundation. Ready to begin. He said he would start Monday. He said it would take 4 weeks. Maybe 5. Then we could accept applications. Then we could change lives. I hung up. I stood at the window. The sun was setting, pink and orange. The oak tree was dark against the sky. I thought about my son. About his hands. How they built things. How they fixed things. How they took broken pieces and made them whole. He had done that with his life. With my life. With all these future lives. He had taken grief and turned it into purpose. He had taken loss and turned it into gain. Not for himself. For others. I pressed my hand against the window. The glass was cool. I could feel the evening air on the other side. I could feel the world waiting. Waiting for what we would build. Waiting for who we would help. Waiting for the doors to open. I turned away from the window. I went to the library. I pulled out one of his notebooks. I opened to a blank page. I found a pen. And I began to write. Names. Ideas. Plans. The work had begun. And it would not stop. Not while I was alive. Not after. That was the point. That was the promise. That was legacy. If you're watching this, subscribe and let me know where you're watching from. 6 months passed. Not slowly. Not quickly. They passed the way work passes. One day into the next. One task into another. Building something that would last. The paperwork cleared in April. The Brooks Scholars Foundation became official. Tax-exempt status approved. Board members appointed. Harold, Patricia, Susan, James, and me. We met once a month. Always in the library. We reviewed budgets. We discussed criteria. We planned outreach. We argued sometimes, politely, about details that mattered. How to measure potential. How to verify need. How to support without smothering. We always found agreement. Because we shared the same mission. The same vision. My son's vision. In May we hired staff. 2 people to start. Rachel managed applications. She was 28 and organized. She had worked in university admissions. She understood students. She understood pressure. Marcus handled communications. He was 35 and patient. He wrote clearly. He answered questions thoroughly. He made complicated things simple. They both worked from the library. We set up desks. We installed computers. We ran cables along the baseboards. The room changed. It kept the books. But it added life, voices, purpose. The oak table became our conference table. The shelves became our backdrop. The library breathed differently now. Not just memory, also future. In June we launched the website. Marcus built it himself. Clean, simple, direct. The Brooks Scholars Foundation. Opening doors for brilliant minds. Application deadline August 15th. Notification August 20th. First class 30 students. Full tuition for 4 years. Plus books. Plus housing stipend. Plus mentorship and internship placement. No restrictions on major. Just curiosity. Just potential. Just need. Within 3 days we had 50 applications. Within a week we had 200. Within a month we had 800. I read every single one. Every essay. Every transcript. Every letter of recommendation. I read them at night. After Rachel and Marcus went home. After the house grew quiet. I sat in the library. I read about dreams. A girl from rural Montana. She wanted to study robotics. She built a prosthetic hand from trash. For her grandfather who lost his in a factory. A boy from Detroit. He wanted to study environmental engineering. He designed a water filter for his school. The school had lead pipes. He had been 15 when he designed it. A girl from South Texas. She wanted to study astrophysics. She taught herself calculus from library books. Her high school did not offer it. She got a perfect score on her AP exam. Story after story. Kid after kid. Brilliant. Driven. Broke. I saw my son in every application. Not literally, but essentially. The hunger to understand. The need to build. The frustration of doors closed. These were his people, and now they would be helped. In July we started interviews. We narrowed 800 to 100. Then 100 to 60. Then 60 to 35. We would choose 30, but we wanted backup. In case someone declined. In case circumstances changed. The interviews happened over video call. Rachel scheduled them, 20 minutes each. I sat in on all of them. I asked one question, always the same question. I asked what they would do if they failed. Not if, when. Because everyone fails eventually. Some said they would try again. Some said they would pivot. Some said they would learn. The best ones paused. They thought before answering. They understood the question was real. Not hypothetical. Not theoretical. Real. One girl said she would cry first. Then she would figure out what went wrong. Then she would fix it. I liked that answer. Honesty first. Then action. We made our selections in August. 30 students. 18 girls. 12 boys. 15 states represented. Every one of them exceptional. Every one of them deserving. We sent letters on August 20th. We coordinated with campus bursars so awards posted as last dollar aid even if bills had already gone out. Thick envelopes. The kind that mean yes. Rachel said students would cry when they opened them. I believed her. I cried writing my welcome note. Not sad tears. Relief. Joy. This was why my son built the trap. This was why he protected the money. Not for revenge. For this. For these 30 kids. For the 30 next year. For the 30 after that. Forever. In September we held an orientation. We rented a hotel conference room. We invited the students and their families. 28 came. 2 could not afford travel. We sent them laptops instead. We set up video calls. The conference room filled slowly. Parents in their best clothes. Students nervous and excited. Younger siblings running between chairs. I stood at the front. Rachel beside me. Marcus beside her. Patricia. Susan. Harold. James. The whole team. We waited for everyone to settle. Then I spoke. I introduced myself. I told them my name. Evelyn Brooks. Mother of Michael Brooks. The man who made this possible. I told them about my son. How he dismantled our radio at 8. How he taught himself to rebuild it. How he never stopped taking things apart. Never stopped putting them back together. Better than before. I told them he believed in systems. In structures that work. In doors that stay open. I told them this foundation was his final engineering project. His best one. I told them they were chosen. Not because they were perfect. But because they were ready. Ready to work. ready to learn, ready to fail and try again. I told them we would support them. With money, with mentorship, with belief. But the work was theirs. The responsibility was theirs. The future was theirs. I told them my son would be proud. I told them I was proud. Then I stopped talking, because my voice was shaking. Rachel stepped forward. She took over. She explained logistics, tuition payments, housing stipends, book allowances, check-in schedules. Her voice was steady and clear. I stepped back. I watched the faces. Parents wiping tears. Students holding hands. A grandmother in the back row. She caught my eye. She nodded. I nodded back. We understood each other. We had given everything. Our children had built something. Now these children would build more. After the presentation we had food. Sandwiches, cookies, coffee, juice. People talked. Quietly at first. Then louder. Then with laughter. I moved through the room. I shook hands. I hugged parents who needed to hug someone. I listened to stories. A father who worked 3 jobs. A mother who cleaned houses. A grandmother who raised 4 grandchildren alone. They thanked me. Over and over. They thanked me. I told them to thank my son. I was just following his instructions. But they thanked me anyway. One girl approached me. Her name was Maya, 17 years old, from Philadelphia. She wanted to study computer science. She said she wrote a program. A simple one. It made a pixel dog wag its tail. She showed me on her phone. A small brown dog. Pixelated. Simple. Joyful. It wagged. I watched it for a long time. Then I looked at her. She was smiling with her whole face. The way my son used to smile. When he solved something. When he built something. When he understood something new. I told her to keep building. I told her to keep making things wag. She laughed. She said she would. I believed her. The event ended at 5. People left slowly, reluctant to go, reluctant to leave this room where possibility lived. I stayed until the end. I helped fold chairs. I threw away paper plates. I turned off lights. Rachel offered to drive me home. I said no. I said I wanted to walk. It was only 2 miles. The evening was warm. I walked slowly. I thought about the day. About the faces. About Maya's pixelated dog. About my son. About inheritance. How we get the word wrong. Money is not inheritance. Money is just a tool. Inheritance is what you build with it. What you pass forward. What you multiply. I got home as the sun set. The house was quiet. I went to the library. I sat in my chair. I looked at the room. Books and desks. Past and future. Memory and mission. All of it breathing together. I closed my eyes. I felt tired. Good tired. The kind that comes from work that matters. I thought about my son's words. Things that matter. This mattered. These kids mattered. This work mattered. And I was not finished yet. If you're watching this, subscribe and let me know where you're watching from. The students started college in September. We tracked them carefully. Weekly check-ins by email. Monthly video calls. Rachel managed the schedule. She was better with technology than I was. But I attended every call. I listened. I asked questions. I remembered names. The first month was hard for most of them. They were homesick, overwhelmed by coursework, unsure if they belonged. One boy called crying. His roommate had a car, new clothes, spending money. He had none of those things. He felt poor. He felt visible. He felt ashamed. I told him I understood. I told him being poor was not shameful. Being wasteful was shameful. Being cruel was shameful. Being poor was just circumstance. I told him to focus on his work, not on his roommate's car. He said he would try. A girl emailed in October. She failed her first calculus exam. She got a 62. She had never failed anything. She said maybe she was not smart enough. Maybe we made a mistake choosing her. I wrote back immediately. I told her failure was information, not identity. I told her my son failed his first engineering exam. He got a 58. He graduated top of his class. I told her to see her professor, to ask questions, to try again. She did. Her next exam she got an 85. By November most of them had steadied. They found their rhythm. They made friends. They learned to study differently, to ask for help, to accept that hard was not the same as impossible. Thanksgiving week they sent thank you notes. Not because we asked. Because they wanted to. Rachel printed them all. She put them in a binder. I read them every one. Some were formal. Some were messy. Some had tear stains. All of them were real. A girl from Iowa wrote 3 pages. About her mother. About their trailer. About nights she studied by flashlight. Because the power was shut off. She said this scholarship saved her life. Not figuratively. Literally. Without it she would have stayed. Worked at the plant. Married young. Had babies too soon. Disappeared into the same life her mother lived. Now she was studying chemical engineering. She was going to build water treatment systems. She was going to help people like her mother. I folded the letter carefully. I put it back in the binder. I sat for a long time, thinking about lives, how they branch, how one door changes everything, how $55 million becomes one girl's future, becomes clean water for people who need it. That was multiplication. That was legacy. In December we held our first board meeting. The full board, plus Rachel and Marcus. We met in the library on a cold afternoon. Snow fell outside the window. Soft and steady. We reviewed the first semester. All 30 students still enrolled. 28 with GPAs above 3.5. 2 struggling but fighting. We discussed support systems. We needed tutors for some. We needed mental health resources for others. We needed to remember they were 18, 19, 20, still learning how to be adults. Still carrying the weight of where they came from. Harold asked about budget. Susan presented the numbers. We spent less than projected. The market had been good. We could expand next year. Maybe 35 students. Maybe 40. Patricia said we should stay at 30. Build the model strong. Then scale carefully. I agreed. Quality mattered more than quantity. My son would have said the same. We voted. 30 students for year 2. Then we could reassess. After the meeting people lingered. They talked by the window. They ate the cookies Rachel brought. They looked at the books. They belonged here now. This was not just my library anymore. It was ours. I stood back and watched them. These good people doing good work. Building something that would outlast all of us. Harold approached me. He held a folder. He said there was something I should know. Something about Sloane. I tensed. I had not thought about her in months. He said she was still working. Still at the coffee shop. She had been promoted to assistant manager. She worked hard. She showed up on time. She treated customers well. She was living in the cottage. Using her stipend. Following the rules. Harold said she had started taking classes. Community college. Business administration. 2 classes. Night classes. She was paying her own tuition. He said he thought I should know. I asked why he was telling me. He said because she was trying. Not for show, not for sympathy, just trying. I nodded. I did not know what to feel. Not forgiveness. I was not there yet. Maybe I would never be. But not hatred either. Something quieter. Acknowledgement maybe. She was living the consequences. And she was working through them. That was what my son designed. Not destruction. Reconstruction. Harold left with the others. I stayed in the library. I pulled out one of my son's notebooks. I opened to a page I had marked. Systems work when people do. He wrote that 3 years before he died. I ran my finger over the words. The ink was faded but clear. He understood people. He understood failure. He understood that punishment alone changes nothing. But structure with opportunity could change everything. He built that for Sloane. Whether she knew it or not. And he built it for me. A way forward. A way through grief. A way to transform loss into purpose. Christmas came quietly. Rachel and Marcus took time off. The office was closed until January. I stayed home. I cooked a small meal. Turkey breast. Mashed potatoes. Green beans. Enough for one. I set the table properly. I lit a candle. I ate slowly. I was alone. But I was not lonely. There is a difference. Loneliness is wanting connection and having none. Being alone is being sufficient. I was sufficient. After dinner I called Harold. I wished him Merry Christmas. He said the same. He asked how I was. I said I was good. I meant it. He said my son would be proud. People kept saying that. I never knew how to respond. But this time I said something. I said my son built this. I was just the trustee. Just the administrator. Harold laughed. He said I was more than that. I was the heart. I hung up. I sat in the living room. I looked at the tree. Small. Simple. Lights only. No ornaments. I did not need ornaments. The light was enough. I thought about the year. About everything that changed. 12 months ago I was buried. Not dead. But buried. Invisible. Discarded. Now I was here. Running a foundation. Changing lives. Sitting in my own house. At my own table. Eating my own dinner. Sufficient. New Year's Eve I stayed awake until midnight. I stood at the window. I watched fireworks in the distance. Small bursts of color against black sky. I thought about time. How it moves. How it heals. How it changes what seems permanent. A year ago I thought I had lost everything. I had not. I had lost access to things. That was all. The things that mattered were still here. Memory. Purpose. Work. The ability to build. The ability to help. The ability to honor my son. By continuing what he started. Midnight came. The fireworks stopped. The sky went dark again. I turned from the window. I went to the library. I sat at the desk. I opened my laptop. I looked at the applications for year 2. They had started coming in already. 300 and counting. More stories. More brilliant minds. More futures waiting to branch. I opened the first one. A boy from Alaska. He wanted to study renewable energy. He had designed a wind turbine from bicycle parts. For his village. They had no power grid. His turbine generated enough electricity for 6 homes. He'd been 16 when he built it. I read his essay twice. Then I opened the next application. Then the next. I worked until 2 in the morning. I was 79 years old. My bones ached. My eyes were tired. But my mind was clear. My purpose was solid. My son had given me this. This work. This meaning. This way to transform grief into something. Something growing. Something multiplying. Something that would never stop opening doors. I closed the laptop. I turned off the light. I went upstairs. I lay down. I thought about the new year. About what it would bring. More students. More stories. More lives changed. More legacy built. I closed my eyes. I felt my son near me. Not literally, but essentially. In the work. In the structure. In the system he designed. He was still here. Still building. Still opening doors. And I was still carrying it forward. I would carry it as long as I could. Then someone else would. That was how systems worked. That was how legacy lived. I fell asleep. Peaceful. Purposeful. Alive. If you're watching this, subscribe and let me know where you're watching from. Spring came in March. The snow melted. The oak tree budded. Life returning the way it always does. We selected the second cohort in April. 30 more students. The process was easier this time. We knew what to look for. Resilience. Curiosity. The ability to fail and keep going. Letters went out April 20th. 30 more thick envelopes. 30 more futures opening. The first cohort finished their freshman year in May. All 30 still enrolled. Some struggled. Some soared. All of them survived. We held a small celebration. Video call with everyone who could attend. 26 students joined. I told them I was proud. Maya showed us her latest project. A program that helped blind students navigate campus. Using phone sensors and audio cues. She built it with 2 classmates. Her face glowed when she talked about it. The way my son's face used to glow. I watched her. I felt something crack open in my chest. Pride maybe. Or proof. Proof that this worked. That one door opened 30 more. And those 30 would open hundreds. In June I turned 80. Rachel brought a cake. Small. Chocolate. 1 candle. We ate it in the library. They asked what I wished for. I said I did not believe in wishes. I believed in work. Wishes were for people with no power. I had power now. Over systems. Over resources. Over doors that could open or stay closed. I did not need wishes. I needed plans. That evening I sat alone in the library. I pulled out a box of my son's things. His watch. His wallet. His wedding ring. A folder of photographs. I opened it. Pictures from his childhood. Him graduating. Him working. Him in this library. That was the last photo I took. 3 months before he got sick. I touched his face in the photograph. I felt the ache. Not sharp anymore. Not drowning. Just there. A permanent weight I had learned to carry. Grief does not end. It just becomes familiar. I thought about time. About what changes. 18 months ago I stood on wet grass. My suitcase beside me. Rain soaking through my hair. A door locked behind me. I felt erased. Now I stood here. Running a foundation. Supporting 60 students. Planning for 90. I was not erased. I was essential. In July we hosted a summer program. 10 students from the first cohort. They came for 2 weeks. They mentored incoming freshmen. They shared what they learned. How to survive. How to belong. Maya taught a workshop on coding. 20 incoming students attended. I watched from the doorway. This was multiplication. She received help. Now she gave it. One afternoon Maya found me in the kitchen. She asked if we could talk. We sat at the table. She thanked me. She said her mother cried when the letter came. Her mother worked 2 jobs. Cleaning offices. Serving lunch. Now she quit 1 job. She sleeps now. She smiles more. The scholarship changed everything. I told her my son grew up like her. Brilliant, driven, broke. I sold my house so he could start his company. He built this foundation so people like her mother would not work 2 jobs. So people like Maya could build things. She asked what he was like. I told her he was curious. He took things apart to understand them. He believed in systems over moments. She said she wished she could have met him. I said she was meeting him now. In this work. In this opportunity. He was here. In everything we built. She hugged me. Then she went back to teaching. Back to multiplying what she received. In August we prepared for fall. 60 students now. The board met on August 15th. We discussed expansion. 35 students next year. I said yes. We were ready. The model worked. After the meeting I stayed late. The library was quiet. I walked along the shelves. I touched the books. I remembered finding each one with my son. The room still held him. But it held more now. It held futures. I sat at the desk. I opened my laptop. I looked at the applications for year 3. 500 already. I would read them all. Every single one. I opened the first application. A girl from West Virginia. She wanted to study mechanical engineering. She built a wheelchair ramp for her grandmother. From scrap wood and borrowed tools. Her grandmother could leave the house now. Could sit outside. Could feel the sun. The girl was 17. She wanted to build ramps everywhere. For everyone who could not feel the sun. I marked her file. Priority review. I opened the next application. I worked until the light turned gold. Then orange. Then purple. This was my work now. Reading stories. Opening doors. Carrying forward what my son built. I thought about justice. Justice is not thunder. Not revenge. Justice is quiet. A series of small clicks. When a mechanism works the way it was designed. My son designed this. A trap for cruelty. A door for brilliance. A system that keeps opening. Long after he is gone. Long after I am gone. That is justice. That is legacy. That is love. I closed my laptop. I turned off the light. I climbed the stairs slowly. My knees hurt. They always did. I did not mind. Pain meant I was still here. Still working. Still carrying it forward. I got ready for bed. I lay down. I thought about my son. About his hands. How they built things. How they fixed things. He fixed me too. Not by giving me money. By giving me purpose. By giving me work that matters. By trusting me with his final project. His best one. I closed my eyes. I felt grateful. Not for what I had. For what I could give. For doors I could open. For futures I could change. For the system that would keep working. Long after I was gone. I fell asleep. Peaceful. Purposeful. Complete.